Rome, 1943. Your whole city has turned into a hungry game. The prize is dinner. The rules change every day, and the best player is 13. Gloria walks around with a school notebook, but she's not doing homework. She's hunting clues. Which shopkeeper suddenly has bread again? Who will sell eggs if you knock twice? Which corner lets you trade shoes for flour before the police appear? In a city full of adults, a kid becomes the sharpest survival radar. A few streets away, Clelia is 23, clutching a ration card that promises fairness and keeps betraying her. Posters scream sacrifice. Radios promise order. Newsreels show smiling citizens clapping on cue. And for 2 safe hours in a dark cinema, you can almost believe the war is neat and controlled. Then the doors open. Thin soup smells drift from apartment windows. Shop shelves look like someone scraped them clean with a knife. People count coins twice before they walk into a bakery, like it's a gamble. Rome is living 2 lives at once, the loud life on the walls and the quiet panic in kitchens. So Clelia turns her home into a survival lab. Spotless table, measured water, bread cut like it's gold. And Gloria starts building a secret map of the city's real supply lines. Because in this Rome, the truth of the war isn't in speeches. It's in a kid's notebook filled with dangerous little facts. Clelia Curti keeps her ration card in her wallet like it's a second identity document. She grew up believing that government rules made sense. If everyone followed the rules and stayed in line, things would be fair. The slogans seemed right. The distribution schedule sounded rational. The idea of sacrifice felt clean and noble. But now, that ration card has become a broken promise. The food it promises arrives late or incomplete, or sometimes not at all. Clelia still tries to keep things orderly. Order feels like a kind of prayer when your cupboards are empty. Their kitchen stays neat. Cups are stacked. Cloth is folded. The table gets wiped down with an almost religious seriousness. Keeping things neat makes it look like you have plenty, even when you don't. The cupboard is organized in a way that hides how little is actually there. The smell of wood is stronger than the smell of food. A few blocks away, there's 13-year-old Gloria Cilanti. She walks around with a notebook that looks like homework, but it isn't homework at all. Gloria notices everything. She notices which stores are out of stock in a way that sounds rehearsed, which grocers suddenly have confidence and whisper about backroom supplies after closing time, which neighbors pretend to be too poor to trade but somehow always manage to feed their children. She notices which streets go dark first during blackouts, which cafe risks playing music after the final siren, which one pretends to be closed while a hand slips a cup of coffee through a barely cracked door. Her pencil has become a survival tool. Her curiosity has become a job. That innocent-looking notebook is the most dangerous weapon in the city. Morning doesn't begin with ideology or politics. It begins with kitchen math. Clelia wakes up to the soft sound of a pot, but the pot doesn't sound heavy enough. That tells her everything she needs to know. Water gets measured carefully. Salt gets rationed in your mind, even when it's not officially rationed on paper. If there's bread, you cut it with the seriousness of a religious ceremony. The smallest piece can start the biggest argument. A potato peel is not waste. It's tomorrow's broth. Cooking becomes an art of substitutions. You use beans instead of meat. You use chicory when coffee is just a memory. You make soups that try to feel filling by repeating the same few ingredients in different disguises. The older relatives get treated like priority. They get the best portions because they're fragile. The young people can still pretend their stamina is endless. The young ones get sent out on errands because speed and daring have value now. The ration office teaches you how to behave in wartime. The line bends around corners. People speak in whispers. Women arrive early with bags that used to be fashionable, but are now just chosen for being strong. Men who once wore authority like a second coat now stand with the same patient stillness as everyone else. The clerk stamps ration cards with bored precision. That stamp is a tiny display of power. But the real politics are on the shelves behind the counter. Someone whispers that the bread portion has been reduced again. Someone else mutters that the coupons promise fairness, but don't guarantee delivery. Clelia watches a woman leave with less than she expected. The woman still thanks the clerk, as if gratitude might buy her credit for next time. When Clelia's turn comes, she accepts what she's given. Her face stays neutral, but underneath, her mind is doing arithmetic. She's calculating how to make this last. Outside, the posters talk about unity. Inside, each family does private mathematics. Everyone is counting and rationing alone. After the ration office, daily life breaks into small errands and constant improvisation. Children become couriers of small hope. A loaf gets carried under a jacket. A jar gets hidden under a scarf. A message gets disguised as casual neighborhood gossip. Factories and offices still try to keep their schedules, as if a timetable can control fate. The trams run, but they move with the exhausted stiffness of a tired animal. Workers talk about football and weather. Talking about food too openly feels like inviting bad luck. People develop what you might call hunger etiquette. You learn how to chew slowly in public so you don't look desperate. You learn how to decline an offer of something tiny, as if you're doing the other person a favor by refusing. The city develops a second economy even before it admits it needs one. Over near the river, around a place called Tor di Nona and its surrounding lanes, an illegal market forms. It's not exactly legal, but it happens every single day anyway. Flour appears twisted into paper cones. Oil gets measured out in spoonfuls. Tobacco is sold by the leaf. Bread looks heavy until you pick it up and feel how light it actually is. The air is thick with negotiation. You don't ask direct questions if you want direct answers. A woman taps a bag with 2 fingers. It's a silent question. Can you hold this until I have money? Another woman offers a ring without naming the emotion attached to it. A young man sells a watch without using the word sell. Food and information change hands at the same speed. Gloria learns that there are stages before you get to Tor di Nona. There are softer places where the risk is lower and hope costs less. She develops what she calls a 4-stop circuit. It's like an education in survival. First stop, the legal breadline. Because sometimes the official system actually does deliver just enough to keep you believing in it. Second stop, a neighbor who trades quietly. Beans for pasta. A small jar of fat in exchange for a promise of future help. Third stop, a courtyard seller. His cousin has countryside connections. Sometimes he can produce eggs or a wedge of cheese for the right combination of cash and discretion. Fourth stop, the last resort. Tor di Nona, where you pay more, lie less, and accept that survival is never cheap. She writes this route down like a student studying rivers. Because it is a river system. It's just made of people instead of water. Clelia's brother wears a uniform. Technically, that uniform is supposed to make places like the black market disappear. He's part of the official script. He knows how to recite the slogans. He knows how to walk with the posture of certainty. But at home, then July 19th, 1943, cracks the city wide open. Late morning. The air feels tight. The sirens start wailing, and this time, it's not a drill. Bombs fall on the rail yards and industrial areas near San Lorenzo. The sound carries across neighborhoods that have done nothing to deserve this violence, but they suffer the consequences anyway. Glass falls from shop windows. Dust rolls through the alleys like weather. People pour out of movie theaters because moving feels safer than sitting under a ceiling that might collapse. A boy loses his cap and doesn't even notice. Gloria breathes through her dress sleeve because the grit in the air tastes like chalk. A neighbor pulls her under stone and says that old buildings remember wars better than people do. When the sirens finally stop, the smoke keeps rising. The day enters a new kind of silence. People do what bodies do in crisis. They shake. They find water. They call out names. They count heads to make sure everyone survived. Mothers become search parties. Shopkeepers become first aid stations. A stranger lends a scarf to bind someone's wound and doesn't wait to be thanked. The next morning, Rome wakes up to a landscape that looks like it's been rearranged by an angry hand. The city responds with its oldest instinct: improvisation. A tailor tapes paper across his broken window and starts selling from a wooden crate. A cart with a damaged wheel becomes a counter. A door pulled off its hinges becomes a tabletop. A bed frame becomes a market stall. Commerce comes back too fast for sentiment. But hunger isn't sentimental either. The city rebuilds a temporary version of reality out of anything that can hold weight. This is how Rome learns that the official script was never a real plan. It was just a costume. A man who was shouting slogans a week earlier is now whispering about where to find oil. A woman who used to boast about being a model citizen is now trading extra bread for soap. It isn't hypocrisy. It's hunger getting smarter. The war is no longer a national story told on propaganda posters. It's a private story, whispered in stairwells. Early September brings news the city can't process quickly enough. There are rumors that the war might be ending, that alliances might be shifting. The news spills into the streets in a mix of half joy and half fear. Some people celebrate because they haven't celebrated in years, and their bodies remember how. Others lock their doors and wait, because uncertainty has taught them to expect traps. Rumors spread faster than facts. Uniforms become confusing. Old loyalties start to sound dangerous when you say them out loud. The city feels like it's been asked to change its entire language overnight. Then occupation tightens the rules in ways that feel both ordinary and suffocating. Checkpoints appear with the logic of a net closing. The curfew turns time itself into a fence. Even walking home late becomes too risky to justify, no matter how hungry you are. The afternoons develop a new kind of pressure. Around the same hour every day, you can feel the city compress. It's like the air itself is trying to fit into a smaller box. At 4 o'clock, the streets still try to look normal. By 4:30, you can see the worry in people's shoulders. You can see them calculating. Vendors pack up twice, first for the police, then for the darkness. A line that looks calm at noon becomes tense and brittle as the curfew hour approaches. At 4:45, the city becomes a countdown. Gloria checks her notebook and then looks at the sky. Aldo, the vendor at Tor di Nona, folds his paper cones faster. Not because speed equals profit, but because speed equals safety. The last purchases of the day change character. A mother is likely to buy something that can become dinner quickly. A teenager might take a risk for something that could be traded tomorrow. A woman buys half of what she truly needs, because half is what she can carry across the curfew line without attracting attention. When 5 o'clock arrives, the streets feel like they're holding their breath. Barter grows into a complete parallel economy. It has its own ethics and its own rules. Gloria learns that a rumor is worth less than a piece of leather. The trade she remembers most clearly is simple enough to feel like a crime. Shoes for flour. She doesn't hesitate. Shoes can be patched or replaced. Flour keeps a family standing upright. She carries it home like it's evidence of something. Her mother doesn't ask where it came from. Questions are a luxury item now. And also, a mother understands that survival is sometimes a silent partnership with risk. Soon after, Gloria watches another trade that burns itself into her understanding of what it means to be an adult. A woman exchanges a winter coat for oil. She pretends her smile is casual, like it doesn't matter. Another neighbor offers mending services in exchange for beans. A man trades a small stack of books for a sack of potatoes. It's like literature itself has agreed to become calories. Clelia's world gets tighter in a different way. Her brother's uniform doesn't protect the household as clearly as she once thought it would. Some sellers open their doors for that uniform. Others quietly close them, unwilling to risk being associated with anyone who might attract the wrong kind of attention. The household becomes a place where loyalty and hunger sit at the same table without speaking to each other. Clelia learns how to cook without showing despair. She adds water to soup in a way that tries to keep the family's dignity intact. She keeps the kitchen spotless, like it's a defense against chaos. On bad days, she comes back from the official ration queue with less than what was promised. On worse days, she comes back with nothing and has to pretend that the walk itself was an accomplishment. Night in occupied Rome requires careful choreography. Everyone moves quietly. Blackouts reshape the city into a place defined by touch and memory instead of sight. Cafes adapt by opening their doors only a hand's width. No bell rings. No bright lamp burns. The bartender pours drinks from muscle memory. Cups find hands in darkness. Jokes become a way of rationing the air itself. A waiter wiping the same glass forever says, "The coffee is loyal. It always shows up late." The room smiles softly, as if laughter can be measured out in safe portions. The cinema becomes therapy for people's raw nerves. People watch comedies because the jokes fit neatly into the darkness. If someone laughs at the wrong moment, it's just because bodies still insist on finding joy, even when all the rules insist on obedience. Music becomes both a risk and a remedy. Someone whispers, "Just a little." A piano begins playing in a tone just loud enough to remind people they're still human. People don't clap when the music stops. Instead, they tap their saucers with spoons. It's a tiny rebellion against the idea that fear gets the final word on pleasure. In these same streets where hunger gets traded in grams and coins, an underground network of mercy grows quietly. Don Pietro Papagallo moves through Rome with focused urgency. He understands that a corridor, a staircase, or a church door can be the difference between life and death. One evening, he escorts a frightened man who has removed his uniform. The man can no longer safely say out loud which side he's on. The priest doesn't ask questions that might endanger them both. He walks the man to a church that's busy enough to hide their true purpose. He pauses at a side chapel to create the appearance of prayer. Then, through a back exit, he guides the man into a narrow street. A baker's wife is waiting there with a wrapped loaf. The loaf is more of an alibi than actual food. The man gets handed a key and a whispered address. The police start asking questions. The questions become a shadow that follows certain people. One night, a car arrives at Don Pietro's door. There's a polite knock, a voice that isn't making a request. Don Pietro goes quietly. The news spreads through the market lines the next day. Someone says the priest has been taken. Another person says he'll be back soon. Someone else says the city has learned not to bet on mercy when power feels nervous. When word arrives later of a mass execution outside Rome, grief moves through the city like cold weather settling in. The piano still plays that night, softer than usual, because grief doesn't cancel hunger, and hunger doesn't cancel grief. A new person steps into Don Pietro's work, taking over where he left off. Networks grow new branches when a main trunk gets cut down. Across the country, the same double-life logic repeats itself with local accents and variations. In Florence, a champion cyclist named Gino Bartali rides the roads as if they're just training routes. But he's carrying something much heavier than athletic endurance inside the frame of his bicycle. To anyone bored at a checkpoint, he just looks like a familiar athlete doing what he's paid to do. Recognition becomes his cover story. He smiles and says, "Training," and the word fits the world's expectations so perfectly that the truth slips right past them. In Assisi, monastery doors open into cool stone rooms that smell of candles and old ink. A cloth gets set down with someone's next chance at life hidden beneath it. "Eat first," a monk says, because courage is easier to carry when your stomach isn't completely empty. Bartali doesn't talk about what he carries. The first rule of surviving a double life is to move through the world as if you're carrying nothing at all. When his day ends, he becomes anonymous in some courtyard. He bends over his bicycle with a wrench. He cleans grease from his hands like he's washing away evidence. He eats bread that tastes like exhaustion. He sleeps the sleep of someone who knows he'll do it all again tomorrow. Up north, Milan is learning the same survival lessons under harsher skies. Heavy bombing raids turn familiar streets into puzzles made of smoke and missing corners. A line forms around a space where a building used to stand. A grandmother presses a schoolbook under her grandson's shirt. In a ruined city, paper becomes as precious as food. Markets return among the rubble because buying and selling is how bodies reassure each other they're still alive and still here. A door still on its hinges becomes a market counter. A bed frame becomes a stall. On one narrow street, a young girl watches her mother trade a tablecloth for eggs. The child doesn't understand the economics yet, but she understands the expression on her mother's face. It's the same expression worn by women in Rome. The same quiet agreement that dignity can be postponed if it means survival gets secured. Back in Rome, on January 24, 1944, Clelia writes a sentence in her notebook. It hits like a private thunderclap. I don't do politics because I can't eat it. Her brother's uniform hangs nearby like a silent argument against what she just wrote. He comes home that evening. He doesn't read her notebook, but after writing that sentence, something shifts. The kitchen feels less like a stage and more like a place where something real is finally allowed to exist. She makes soup that night. It tastes like she's decided something that no propaganda poster can undo. Gloria hears the sentence later through a friend. It lands like a truth that everyone already knew, but needed someone to say out loud. Aldo hears it too, the vendor at Tor di Nona. He keeps weighing out his flour because the line is still long and the city is still being watched. But the sentence travels anyway. A good sentence in wartime becomes a tool that people share. When liberation finally arrives in June 1944, the word itself feels electric. Allied military vehicles roll into Rome. The posters from the previous regime suddenly look embarrassed under the sunlight. People spill into the streets because hope is a habit that comes back quickly when it's given permission. But cupboards don't refill overnight. The underground economy doesn't vanish. It adapts. The black market becomes bilingual now. Cigarettes, coffee, chocolate, canned goods. Objects that felt like myths suddenly acquire a local exchange rate within hours. The etiquette stays the same as before. Don't say names too loudly. Don't show your full wallet. Don't look too eager. Old survival instincts greet new goods without any apology. Gloria is older now. Only by months, but those months feel like years. Her notebook is stained with grease and missing a corner. She can still find oil when people need it, though the bottles are smaller now and money feels different in her hand. Aldo still twists paper into cones at his market stall. Faster now. Speed itself has become a competitive advantage in a city that no longer trusts supply chains to behave predictably. Clelia steps into the square with her headscarf tied tight. She lifts her shopping bag with more confidence now. She knows where to stand. She knows when to ask questions and when to stay quiet. Liberation has changed which uniforms you see on the street, but it hasn't changed the basic truth that a family still needs dinner. The war hasn't just changed what people eat. It's changed how they understand each other. You can see it in how neighbors no longer pretend they survive alone. You can see it in the quiet acknowledgement that the official script was never actually enough. You can see it in how small kindnesses are now counted as serious resources. A whispered tip about a delivery, a borrowed pot, a spare blanket, a warning about which street is unsafe tonight. The city has learned that networks of people are a kind of oxygen you need to breathe. A photograph from just after liberation shows market stalls crowded under crooked frames. Disorder itself has become ordinary. In Piazza Colonna, an American soldier passes chocolate to a woman. She breaks it into pieces with ritual care. 2 pieces for her children to taste the new world. 1 piece for herself so she can remember the old world without bitterness. The war has taught her that survival is rarely grand or heroic. It's mostly precise, repetitive, and shared. What kept people alive during those years wasn't obedience to the official rules. It was favors, barter, mercy, and the quiet expertise of ordinary people who became expert logisticians of survival. A piano note played softly enough to avoid trouble, but loudly enough to let people breathe again. A bicycle on the road, carrying documents that could save a family. A sentence written in a kitchen that told the truth without asking anyone's permission. When the propaganda posters finally peeled away from the walls, what remained wasn't a single heroic story. It was a collage of ordinary courage. The double life people lived during the war didn't end when peace came. It left behind a kind of expertise, the ability to build survival out of thin supply, to protect each other without announcing it, to be practical and pragmatic without losing tenderness. That was a normal day in wartime Italy, lived off the official books. Quietly defiant, painstakingly human, and held together by the invisible map that people carried in their heads.